In this video module, we will complete our discussion of drug discovery and development by looking at new drug approval and post-marketing surveillance of these drugs once they have been approved to go to market by FDA. I want to bring in some slides that we've used in previous videos just to remind us kind of where we've come from in this process and to bring us to this point of FDA review. And that is that first in the discovery process, we've learned about the disease state, we've identified drug targets that might affect that disease state. In drug discovery, we've either discovered or synthesized compounds that affect that target. We've taken them through clinical trials, and it seems that this lead compound, this drug molecule, has promise. So we make an investigational new drug application to FDA. If they approve that, we're free to test this new product in real live patients. We also described that in this process an IRB, or an Institutional Review Board, comes to bear. And they review what we plan to do with human subjects to make sure that all safety parameters are in place, that they are providing informed consent, that they understand exactly what's going to happen to them in this research, and that they are free to withdraw from this research project at any time. If all those things go well, then we go into clinical trials, and we describe that as a three-phase process, beginning in phase 1 with a relatively low number of healthy volunteers to look at some initial safety data and dosage for this compound. If that still looks good, we might move into phase 2, where we take a little bit larger number of patients with the condition and start to find out if this drug really works for this condition or if it is efficacious. We continue to look at dosing data as well as safety data as well. And then if those two phases go well, we might make the investment into phase 3, and it isn't an investment because now we're looking at thousands of patients, we're spending millions of dollars and using multiple sites where we are treating patients to find out in random controlled trials if this drug is efficacious, if it, how it compares to other therapies or how it compares to placebo therapy. And if all of that research up through phase 3, including safety, dosage, efficacy, looks promising, at the end of all of that, we can then go to the FDA for approval. Remember that the drug funnel through this process is pretty tight. We've described to you that the screening process in drug discovery can begin with 5,000 to 10,000 compounds, which narrows down to 250 about in preclinical trials, down to about 5 compounds in clinical trials, and eventually maybe one of them goes to market. So we start with 10,000 compounds, we come down to maybe one that will eventually make it to market, and we've spent about $1 billion in the process, and we've spent a lot of time doing it. On average, that time, from the time we start drug discovery through the time we go to FDA for approval, we've spent about 10 to 15 years. So it's a very lengthy, expensive process. So what does FDA do? Once we've been through these clinical trials and we discover that this product does have promise, we would make a new drug application to FDA, or an NDA. FDA then, in that process, would be looking at several things. They would review the clinical trials results. What did we learn about the safety of this product, as well as the efficaciousness of it? They would also look at the manufacturing capacity of the company who wishes to produce it. Can they make this in a reliable and consistent way, and do they have the facilities to be able to take this drug to market? And finally, they will review product labeling. And I'm going to define labeling for you in one of our pharmacy fundamentals at the end of the module. Really, what the FDA is trying to do through this process is to answer this question. Do the benefits of the drug outweigh its risks? I mean, is it effective? Does it add to our kind of menu of drugs that we have to be able to treat this disease in patients? And do its benefits outweigh its risks such that we should take the chance of using it in real patients? By the way, FDA does have accelerated approval. The approval process can take a considerable amount of time, but if a drug has a kind of breakthrough therapy potential, if you will, if it really is a promising new agent, or maybe treating a condition that we had no treatment for before, for example, they can certainly kind of fast track this approval to get those drugs to market quicker. In that process, there's a couple of other things that come to bear. One is a thing called the Prescription Drug User Fee Act. They will refer to this as PDUFA in FDA. And that is that the companies who bring drugs to be reviewed by FDA must pay for them to do this review. It helps to allay the cost of the government in the review process. These fees are are kind of substantial. They range in the $1 to $2 million range for each one of these applications that is made. They are reviewed in this process by the Office of Scientific Investigations. And what this group does is to make sure that the integrity of the data is sound in terms of the safety and efficaciousness of the product, and also that human subjects have been protected throughout the research endeavor. And then finally, they can use advisory committees. They may bring in experts in the field that's being considered, maybe about the disease state or the therapy involved, to get their input as FDA makes this decision on whether this drug can be marketed or not. So once the drug has been approved for market, if it has, what happens then? It goes into the marketplace. And I want to point out that several things can continue to happen in terms of how we, from an FDA standpoint, can continue to study or control the use of this product. And I want to talk about REMS, or Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategies. You'll see that is a pharmacy fundamental. And phase 4 trials. Let's think about REMS first of all. If FDA approves a product, they say this product has potential, but we're really concerned about the risk profile of this product. They can put some special parameters around it that would require maybe special provider training. If I'm going to prescribe this, that I have to have special training to do it. Maybe it could have some restrictions in terms of special certification or restrictions on dispensers. If I'm going to be dispensing it, maybe I have to be specially trained or have special facilities to be able to do that. We may have special guidelines for which patients could use it, and they may require special monitoring of these patients. For example, things like special laboratory tests. And we may have patient registries so we can keep track of who's using these products. These are called REMS, or Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategies. And then finally, FDA can certainly require companies to continue to test this agent even after it has been marketed in what they'll call phase 4 trials. So, after the product goes to market, we may want to continue to study it because we still have maybe some lingering concerns about the product, and maybe we can continue to do trials with this drug in some different patient populations than were studied before. Really, in essence, drugs are studied from the time they are conceptualized throughout their life cycle in one way or another. And then I want to think about FDA's post-marketing surveillance in a couple of different ways. One is they have a program called MedWatch, and that's a pharmacy fundamental for today. MedWatch is an adverse reporting program that we'll define for you in a minute. They also have a project called the Sentinel Initiative for monitoring medication product safety. And in this Sentinel initiative, they essentially connect databases, things like electronic medical records or even insurance claims data, to help FDA electronically kind of survey the safety profile of this product as it goes into this huge market that we would use it in. If you think about the process, we have these carefully controlled phase 1, 2, and 3 trials that have been monitored very carefully by FDA. Patients are selected, those who can prescribe it selected very carefully. And then we release this into the marketplace with 300 million people in the United States using it in all sorts of different ways with different prescribers. Patients have different combinations of products they're using. It gets very much more complicated. So the Sentinel initiative is to allow FDA to use electronic means to continue to monitor that product in the marketplace. They also have a thing called the Safe Use Initiative, which is really trying to collaborate with healthcare providers and with industry and with FDA and other governmental agencies to help reduce preventable harm from medications. It's more of a collaborative process where these groups are working together in a collaborative way. Then finally, there is an independent drug safety oversight board in the government that's structured through FDA, which really includes 9 governmental agencies that continues to oversee this in a way that's independent of FDA per se. Let's look at our pharmacy fundamentals for this module. First, drug labeling. When we think of a label, we think of something that we put on a bottle perhaps or on a package. That's, at least to me, when I think of a label, that's what I think of. But let me just define for you what the U.S. Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act defines as labeling for drugs, and that is all labels and other written, printed, or graphic material associated with the medication. So anything that's in the box, on the label, anything that the patient sees that surrounds this medication is considered a part of the labeling. Let's redefine REMS for you, an important concept. FDA's authority under the Food and Drug Administration Amendments Act of 2007 to require a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy for manufacturers to ensure that the benefits of a drug or biological product outweigh its risks. REMS may include special training requirements or restrictions on prescribers or dispensers, as well as special patient guidelines, monitoring, and/or registration. I'm going to define a concept for you called pharmacovigilance, which really encompasses this idea of studying drugs throughout their life cycle. And the World Health Organization defines pharmacovigilance as this: the science and activities relating to the detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse effects or any drug-related problem. This is an ongoing process that begins in clinical trials and continues throughout a product's life cycle. And then finally, we've defined MedWatch, which is an FDA program. It is a reporting system for serious adverse events, product quality problems, product use errors, or therapeutic inequivalence/failures suspected to be associated with the use of an FDA-regulated drug, biologic, medical device, dietary supplement, or cosmetic. Consumers or health professionals can submit MedWatch reports to the federal government through FDA at fda.gov. So you as a consumer are having a problem with a drug product that you've taken, you can certainly report that through the FDA's website, as well as your physician or your pharmacist or any other health provider. This is our discussion forums question for this module. We've defined the approval process from FDA and post-marketing surveillance. We continue to have problems with drugs when they go to market. Some very celebrated cases where patients have died or had serious adverse events from medications once they went to market that maybe weren't expected. What else could be done from a regulatory perspective to better assure the ongoing safety of prescription drugs after they have been approved by the Food and Drug Administration? Well, we've finished our discussions of drug discovery and development, and I look forward to hearing from you through the discussion forums about these topics.